Haven't read any other ones.
I kind of have mixed feelings after reading them. Like, yeah, that was okay, but they're not entirely my thing.
I might think it's slightly nerdy, or I don't want to be embarrassed about it.
Still this kind of perceived attitude with comics that they're mostly for kids.
Everyone assumes that comics are for kids, but the fact is they're mostly read by 30, 40-year-old guys like me, and kids don't read comics anymore, which is a shame because they're actually, they're great. They promote literacy and, engage their imaginations and their creativity, and it's all good. And I think we need more good comics for kids. I think a lot of superhero comics are about their own continuity, and they don't really have anything to do with real life or real people. So one of the things I try to do is make it accessible. So I would like to see more outreach. I would like to see stuff that is designed to appeal to the guy in the street. Because I never grew up reading superhero comics, this whole kind of closed ecosystem is a little bit weird and alienating for me. So I always try and write stuff for the guy in the street in mind, so that Stan Lee famously said that every issue is somebody's first issue, and I always try and write with that in mind.
The casual reader doesn't buy stapled monthly pamphlet comics. They'll buy trade paperback collections in bookshops. I think it's more a question of advertising them correctly to people than worrying about issue numbers and things like that.
If there were more sort of marketing and promotion in this country for comics and things, I think we would see a lot more people jumping on those books.
To bring in new readers is a good thing, but where are they advertising it? They're only advertising it within the comics industry, so the kind of people that are looking at it are already in the comics industry, so it's not like this is a full-scale advertising campaign on billboards and train bus stops, internet. Outside of the usual places, there is no advertising, there is no campaign, so I'd say that overall it's just a way to trap people who are already reading comics into buying more comics.
I think it's the fact that you're more involved in it, and it's easier to just watch a film, watch it. You don't have to turn the page, just happens.
The films are more accessible, they're more mass market, and they're just aimed at a broader audience.
A comic book movie comes out, they do the comic book of the movie, and so when you go into W.H. Smith's, you can pick that up, and then it kind of if you read it and you like it, then you actually I wouldn't mind reading some more.
People would be, say, my age, I used to read Spider-Man until I was about 15, 16. Movies come back, I want to know what he's up to, and we'd tell them the Ultimate Spider-Man.
Like the Ultimate line, which is obviously completely aimed at new readers. But the main ongoing superhero titles by or about characters that people will have heard of are so mired in continuity, and the people who write them are the people who were reading them since they were 10 years old or whatever, that those comics will never be for new readers. And again, like I say, that's kind of the joy of it, is that you jump in, you have no idea what's going on. It's not for you when you start reading, but there's nothing wrong with that.
People will see a comics-based film not necessarily knowing it's even based on comics, or not needing to know about the background of the comics themselves to understand the storyline, because it's a self-contained unit. You don't have to buy 2 years worth of comics, for instance, to understand what's going on in the film.
We've had stuff sitting around on the shelves for months that as soon as the movie trailer comes out will vanish, and it's all really good stuff, but it's the movie that kicks people into thinking, I want this. Interestingly, from the publisher's point of view, what it means is they'll put out 9 miniseries in the space of 3 months, which floods the market to the point where nobody cares and nobody buys it, and it's so that these series have finished and then the trade paperback graphic novel collection has come out by the time the movie is released.
Movies are big business, but I think that's just another way of raising awareness for it as well. The way to go about trying to get more people interested would be to go back to newsstand sales.
It used to be in America that comics were sold at what they called newsstands, which is what we would call newsagents. I think it was the early 80s when they created the direct market. That's when it moved into specific comic stores rather than generic newsagents. I was paying the bill in my local newsagents for my parents' newspaper bill. And so they had a big stack of American comics on the counter, which normally I wouldn't bother with because I was a 2000 AD guy. And then they had an issue of Swamp Thing on the top, which really caught my eye because it looked incredibly garish. And it had John Constantine in it, who's this sarcastic English guy, giving lip to Batman. I had no idea what was going on, but I loved this character. So that sent me off to try and find back issues of it.
At Orbital, we have a massive selection of back issues. That's what we kind of pride ourselves on.
We get a lot of people in because we've got a lot of comics. The older, when I say older, I mean like the late 80s, early 90s stuff, really cheap.
If you go back to the 80s and look at the price comparison for, say, a Mars bar, and look how much a Mars bar costs now. Say a Mars bar was like 20p back then, and a comic was 20p. Now a comic's £3 and a Mars bar's 60p. So, you know, as far as the rate of inflation goes, it doesn't quite work, but...
You know, I pick up a comic and I flick through it and I see if it appeals to me. And if it does appeal to me, I'll think about buying it, and that's when I look at the price. And if it's too expensive, I'll put it back on the shelf. But I don't look at the price first.
If a comic's $3, then disposable income for most people can probably cover a copy or an issue.
For new readers, I would suggest they find their local comic shop, which you can find. There's a comic book store locator online. The Diamond website, and just talk to the guys who work there, ask for recommendations for where to begin. I think a good place to start is always independent comic books, rather than ones published by the big two Marvel and DC companies, because their stuff tends to be long form and quite complicated and involved, whereas independent stuff you usually have a more singular vision from a particular creator who's doing his own sort of passion project, and I think that leads to better comics, and they tend to be more accessible.
There's such a range and opportunity now in comics that, you know, it's not, even if you don't particularly like superheroes, there's something for everyone.
You could pick up a book and find that it's really, really easy to understand from the offset, and you know you might just be completely inundated with, you know, information and not understand a word of it.
Civil War, that was pretty much my first comic book. If you're using an event book as a starting point, you know what's the universe is after that.
Pick a character they like and start reading that book and see if they like it. And if they like it, they can go back and look at the classic runs or stories from the past. As far as I can see, the exclusive joy of reading superhero comics is not having a clue what's going on when you start reading it.
Just try it, because comics have changed a lot in the last 2 decades.
Where else is a better place to start than now?